If you don't smoke, don't start. If you smoke, quit. If you don't quit, change. It's the motto of Unsmoke Canada, and a key component is change. Welcome to the Unsmoke Conversation, the journey towards a smoke-free Canada. I'm your host, Melanie Nicholson, and today we're talking about change and the importance of smoke-free alternatives. Tobacco harm reduction is a topic gaining more awareness around the world as scientists and health experts explore the transition between cigarettes and quitting smoking altogether. Harm reduction is a model that provides an alternative option as part of treatment. Dr. John Oyston is a retired assistant professor from the University of Toronto and has been an advocate for tobacco control for many years. We are welcoming John to the conversation today. Thanks for joining us.
You're very welcome.
When you talk about harm reduction to your patients, what does that conversation look like in terms of explaining that to them?
At the time when I was doing clinical anesthesia, I wasn't so much involved in harm reduction. I was just involved in getting people to stop smoking, right? So at that stage, what I was talking about was the traditional methods of smoking cessation. I was talking about, reduce to quit, quitting cold turkey, and using nicotine replacement therapies, patches and gum. By the time that vaping and other safer nicotine alternatives were becoming more talked about, I'd already actually retired from clinical anesthesia. So I haven't actually talked to patients about those alternatives. That's something that's relatively new in my medical practice.
Fair. There are several organizations that are working that I know you're involved in conversations with when it comes to vaping rights and those conversations. Can you talk a bit about the work being done across the country when it comes to vaping rights?
Certainly. So in order for vaping to be an effective alternative to cigarette smoking, we need three things to happen. It has to be effective, it has to be affordable, and it has to be enjoyable. And at the moment, things are happening in Canada that are eroding all those three things. I think the rights of smokers to have access to safer alternatives to cigarette smoking also needs to be supported and addressed. At the moment, what's happening at various levels of government across Canada is vaping is being made less affordable because they're looking at tax increases on vaping in the very near future. And that shouldn't be happening, right? Vaping should always be a cheaper alternative to cigarette smoking, because if you want to encourage people to do one thing rather than another, you need to make sure that the thing that you want them to do is cheaper than the thing that you don't want them to do. And one of the things that makes vaping enjoyable for a lot of people is the fact that it gets them away from tobacco smoke, it gets them away from the flavor of tobacco, and it can be into anything else that they enjoy. And Canada is looking to ban those. They've certainly banned them in some provinces, and they're looking or considering banning them federally. So at the moment, they're making vaping less affordable, less effective, and less attractive. So I think things are going in the wrong direction.
So as a stakeholder in tobacco harm reduction, then, would you say that's one of the biggest challenges when we're talking about access and rights for vapers?
There's a whole pile of things that are problematic. The whole structure of vaping in Canada is gradually being destroyed because ideally a lot of it should depend upon independent vape shops that are small businesses that are privately run, where you have people who are almost always ex-smokers, who are almost always passionate about vaping. They believe that vaping has saved their lives. And they can set up a high street business, which is great because they see someone who looks like them, talks like them, has the experience of being a smoker, and that person can provide them with support and advice. But if we eliminate flavors and we do a whole pile of other things, then the vape shop industry is just going to die. And the resources that represents, we're never going to take advantage of, or we're not going to be able to take advantage of any further. So that's one issue. The other issue is just education and ignorance, both at the public level and in the medical profession, unfortunately, that there is a huge misunderstanding about the relative risk of vaping and other non-combustible tobacco products compared to cigarette smoking, which has got to the stage where more people in Canada think that vaping is more dangerous than smoking than think that it's less dangerous than smoking. And even in the medical community, there's an enormous amount of ignorance.
So let's talk about impact from your perspective. When you think about the work you've been involved in thus far and going forward now in this space, what impact would you like to have when it comes to tobacco harm reduction?
There's a field that they call knowledge translation, right? Which basically means people who are expert in a field who then manage to communicate that to other people and to explain it and to make the shift from knowing something as a sort of fact in your brain to bringing it out in real life and actually acting upon it. And that's one of the things where I would like to be most active. Physicians are incredibly conservative. They're incredibly reluctant to adopt to new ideas. It takes a very long time for physicians to adapt to something new. And in one study, it was 17 years. You basically have to wait for a new generation of doctors to appear and to be trained. And that, to my mind, is unacceptable. And I would like to be someone who moves the dial a little bit, moves things along a little bit faster, and gets things changed. But it's an incredibly hard thing to do.
And it's continuing conversations and education and awareness that will help continue to move things forward, I imagine.
It is, but it's a question of finding the correct forums in which to do these things. And I think the majority of physicians in Canada think that they already know everything they need to know about vaping. They know that vaping is dangerous. They know that kids shouldn't vape. They've seen the headlines, but they haven't actually read the rest of the scientific papers. And because they think they know about it, they don't want to go to a conference about it. They don't want to, it's not on their list of topics that they have to research because it's something they don't know that they don't know. And that makes it all the more harder. So it's very hard to even find an audience of physicians who are interested in learning about the positive side of vaping. They all just want to know about the negative side because that's where they think everybody is, and that's where the groupthink is on the topic.
Interesting. Well, we really want to thank you so much for taking the time out today to have this conversation with us and wish you all the best in your continued efforts.
Thank you
so much.